Of the highlights of the Economic Survey 2023, where, in case you're just joining us, the growth in 2022 was 4.8%, down from 7.6%, and they've highlighted various sectors within the economy, which some grew, some didn't, some were contracting, including the agriculture and manufacturing sector. Equally, more details from that particular survey by KNBS. More Kenyans contributed to pension plans. Touching on the education sector, 2,000 ECDEs shut down, even as number of learners surged in various counties. All to do with that economic survey. We want to continue with it. And as Nderitu Mureithi comes in, I'm pretty sure you have a couple of reactions from what the panelists mentioned. Just tell us from where you sit, according to the economic survey, break it down for Kenyan on how this measures what has been encompassed in that report, on how this will inform policy going forward in order to support economic activity, and definitely, because this is a cause of concern, reducing the cost of living.
Well, thank you. Ramogi started off on debt, so let me start off on inflation or cost of living.
Okay.
And Mheshimiwa Binyasi pointed out, you see, when you make economic policy, or as government, as you're running the government, your responsibility is to manage, a variety of things, and your policies must be coherent. Otherwise, what you will find is that your effort on one side is frankly cancelling out your effort on the other side. Now, nobody can argue against supporting production. There's nothing wrong with supporting production. Let's start there.
Okay.
Secondly, fertilizer, the idea of supporting fertilizer is not new. It's not even innovative, and it is not new. Certainly in our lifetime in Parliament with my colleague here, back 15, 20 years, we were doing fertilizer subsidy. But I won't go into, I don't want, our colleagues have already talked to the difficulties of subsidy. Now, but what problem are you trying to fix? You're trying to fix a cost of living problem that is today. Production of maize, for example, will take you 6, 7 months, 4 months, depending on the variety of maize that you're growing. So how do you do to support the Kenyan today? Number 3, what is driving this high cost of living is petroleum. So high fuel or energy costs, primarily because oil prices are really high. Now, obviously, supporting agricultural production does not solve this problem. So it doesn't go away. Not to say that there's anything wrong with supporting production of food. You should support production of food. But right now, the big issue is that war in Ukraine and other international conditions have really brought up the price of petroleum. And that price of petroleum works its way into electricity. So the reason government is under very severe criticism is that the policies are not coherent. You say you're trying to fix the cost of living, but you are the one increasing the cost of electricity, which is a key driver in the inflation equation. You say you're trying to bring down the cost of living, but you're doing nothing about bringing down the cost of petroleum. You can say, oh, but we're not paying for $18. All you're doing is moving the problem 2-3 months down the road. It doesn't eliminate the problem. What would be a coherent set of policies? It would go like this. And we go back to Ramogi. And you can blame whoever you want, including previous regimes, for the debt. But I want to remind our colleagues in Parliament, they were still the ones there. They were in charge of budget committees. They were in charge of the finance committees that was approving this borrowing. So they are part and parcel of the problem. Nonetheless, we are here. You have a big debt problem, and most of it is because of short-term debt, which is expensive. What you should do under those circumstances is bring down interest rates so that you can trade this expensive debt for cheaper debt. You free resources from that debt payment to use to support the Kenyan in the short-term subsidy. And nobody is telling you to subsidize consumption forever. It is a short-term problem as you try to get out of the bind. So you've reduced interest rates so that you have cheaper debt, and the resources you are freeing with the debt service you use to support consumption, but you also then use to support the production side. Then some other basic hygiene things that are on the table, and Mheshimiwa will know very well. Government sets inflationary expectations by writing something legally. The Minister for Finance says, I want inflation at this level. What has he said now? 7.5%. We believe that is way too high. He should say 0, so that the whole economy is reacting to that particular target. And these are not unreasonable things to ask of any, any team that is managing the economy. Finally, you said time to implement. We criticize this thing because, look, the key decision makers in this government are not really new to what we are discussing. I mean, the CS Treasury was a central bank governor during Kibaki time. Why can't he just do it's nothing new that the advisors were key technocrats when this thing was working. Even at the political leadership, the president is not new to this thing. He was Minister for Agriculture. I mean, he has been in government since 1997. His party leader is really not new. He's an old hand in managing government affairs. He was a minister probably when Ramogi and I were still in primary school. So they cannot
Surely you mean the former party leader.
By the way,
the Prime Cabinet Secretary, yes.
True.
No, I said his party leader, but even he should become party leader. After all, you're talking about succession and allowing others to lead.
Deputy, so
he is on.
He's closer now.
And you can see. I wish him. All I'm saying is that these good people, frankly, they cannot say that what they need is time to learn what to do. It cannot possibly, and Kenyans don't have the time. And I want to just try and dissuade Kasim. When citizens go to the street, remember the Katiba. Sovereign will belongs to the people. They donate it to us when they elect us. But ultimately, they can exercise it, and that power is always with them. And when citizens honestly go to the street, we should not try to belittle it or call it names. What we should try and understand is what is causing citizens to go to the streets. On the destruction of property question, certainly we in Azimio have pointed fingers at government. And here is my evidence. When Northlands was invaded, that invasion was going on for more than 10 hours with no police response. I mean, the opposition is not in charge of the police. I mean, and there are videos all over the place, vehicles whose plates are known. You've not had a single person charged. You saw 2 days ago on Gong Road, a passenger vehicle, and the video is frankly quite incriminating. You can see that this thing is stage managed for a particular outcome. You saw on Southern Bypass the truck that was banned. The police are actually walking away from it. So we do not subscribe to destruction of property, and we don't think it's a correct thing. And the police must do their work to whatever. But I think it is wrong to belittle Kenyans who are stepping out to say, good people, something is dramatically wrong, and the answers are available. And you don't need to call me names, just fix the economy. As we said, if real wages declining for a third, fourth year, that's what Kenyans are expressing. The frustration that their livelihoods are not improving, yeah? And all that we are doing is making promises, moving, and blaming, Derito and Bunyasi because they were in parliament. They are to blame. Let's fix the problem, good people. Thank you.
The economy, without the economy, we can't be here. But the economy, what will improve the economy is peace, generally. Forget about the demonstration, forget about the mandamano. There is no economy without peace. The moment you threaten peace, then you're actually threatening the economy. Look at our neighbors here of late, Sudan. You can't talk about the economy now because there is no peace. Whoever started it, whether he had good intentions for the people of Sudan or bad intentions, now the economy of Sudan is, literally there is no country now in Sudan with that kind of bombing in Khartoum, the capital city, you see. So if now you tell me that whoever started it had good intentions of improving the lives of the Sudanese, but that's where it has reached, and you know, having been seasoned politicians and Ruto here, having been a member of parliament, a governor now at the epitome of the chief campaigner and having the blueprint for Azimio, he knows very well that any steps that will threaten the peace of any country definitely does not help the economy. And I think that's where we are. I've been in these platforms before, and I said even before the mandamano started, that we know the mandamano organized by Raila cannot be peaceful. And it came to pass. I don't think that was, didn't need a prophet or a soothsayer to tell me that. And even where he sits, I think that's what he knows. Our mandamanos
you're
have never
blaming
been
one
peaceful.
side, and sorry to cut you short.
Yeah.
The police are supposed to protect protesters. Were they, from where you sit?
Exactly.
Are they equally to blame?
Initially you realize, you know, this mandamano was as metamorphosed from where it started. Initially they were peaceful, but we knew the end game was not for them to be peaceful. And when they were peaceful,
how did you know?
And when we've had mandamanos before from your side, but what happened initially? When they were peaceful, the policemen were there, policewomen were there, people will come, have their rallies at Kamkunji, talk, go home, and the policeman didn't throw any tear gas. I think this is also on record. We've had, I think, 4 or 5 of them before now they went to where they wanted to go, you know. And you realize that this mandamanos, or that constitutional right which is being exercised, is not for any good. Because even when attempts are made to come to the negotiating table for people to agree, some people still find very flimsy excuses to say, no, that is not the way we want to go. Or they put unnecessary demands, which have nothing to do with the economy. And here we are discussing the economy, and to me, I can discuss this economy the whole day, because it's so important to anybody, to everybody in this country, not just for the politicians. Yeah. So I think that is where we should actually zero on. And maybe I take this opportunity to thank Mheshimiwa Ruto here. He knows his constitutional right, but he has not actually put a sufuria on his head. He knows that, because he knows that will not help. Okay. But overall, let me just say something about what Mheshimiwa Ramogi was talking about here, about the whole plan of this government in terms of improving the economy. Remember, how did we find ourselves here? This just didn't start on 9th of August. If you look at the prices of the basic commodities on 9th of August, where were they? Even with the subsidy, you know, unless somebody was just benefiting, because the 1 month where now we knew that there was money put for subsidy for Unga, that Unga was not available. That was the only effect. Now, are you saying that you would want the current government to make Unga disappear? And you know, this is a very basic commodity. I think that is where the reality, or as leaders from across the divide, we should realize that it never worked. We already have a history that doesn't work. And going back there, unless people just want to pocket the money, it will not help the common mwananchi. But let's also agree that with all the difficulties, the prices are coming down, even before we harvest, you see. And this is because of the efforts, you know, the policies that have been put in place. They are not yet down to where we would want them to be. But comparing the price on 9th of August and the price as we speak now of the basic commodity, Unga, it has come down. And I don't know why people are not appreciating that, even from the other side. I think that's where the problem. Look at the whole value chain. Give me another extra minute.
Yeah, sure.
When it comes to production, Ramogi, it's not about fertilizer. If you have taken time to read even our last, when we are doing the supplementary budget and now the budget, and that's a public document, we are talking about the project 10,000. That means providing water for agriculture. Of course, we don't have water for drinking and whatever, but we are doing now multi-purpose use for the dams that we are doing, for clean water agriculture, and I think that is the whole value chain. We've been relying on the rains, of course. We are doing dams which can last 2 seasons, 3 seasons. Of course, if the extreme drought, that's now God's intervention. But in terms of planning, those are the steps. So it's not just about the fertilizer. It's about also provision for water for the purposes of making sure that the food comes in.
Okay.
But the most interesting thing, which is again very important, is the depreciating dollar. This one, unless we discuss about it and probably get a solution to it, apart from what I think the government is doing, that is the most worrying. It's not about even the East Africa region. You know, currently I come from a county which borders Tanzania. We are not depreciating against the dollar. We are depreciating against our neighbors here. A time like this last year, the Kenyan shilling was exchanging at 23 Tanzanian shillings to the Kenyan shilling. Now it's down to 15. That is the reality. So we really have a problem when it comes to the depreciation of the Kenyan shilling against even our neighbors. And it will take another discourse now, the monetary experts and all that, to bring this whole thing together. But certainly agree, you cannot bring down the cost of living without bringing the cost of energy. That is very basic. You cannot do manufacturing if the cost of energy is high. That is basic. Yeah. But I can assure you, given time, those are the things that we are working on, and there are sound policies to manage that.
Okay, you sort of echo what President William Ruto had to say during the Labor Day celebrations, and we just have a short clip on what he talked about in terms of fixing the economy. If we could just play it right now, so Ramogi can equally comment on it as we highlight other issues as well, touching on the state of the economy. All right, I hope we can get that short clip of President William Ruto. I think it was during the 58th Labor Day celebrations held just this Monday. I've been informed it's ready. There we go.
Gharama ya maisha. Na hiyo mpango watu wengine hawaelewi. Unga sio ya kwamba inapunguzwa bei ati kwa shelf. Unga inaanza kupunguzwa bei kwa kumsaidia mkulima shambani azalishe chakula ya kutosha, ndio chakula ikuwe kingi, ikifika pale sokoni iwe bei yake imepungua. Tunaelewana? Hata ubebe sufuria kwa kichwa siku ngapi, bei ya unga itapungua kwa kuweka sufuria kwa kichwa? Hata kama ni kwa uganga, hata ikiwa ni kwa madawa. So mimi nataka tuelewane. Na unajua hii bei ya unga ilifika 230 kwa sababu mawazo ya hawa jamaa wanafikiria kwamba ukiweka sufuria kwa kichwa ndio bei itapungua. If you do not have a plan on how to grow more food so that you increase supply, how are you going to reduce the prices of food commodities? And that is why mimi nawashukuru wakulima wetu. Tumepatia, niliwaeleza ya kwamba tutapunguza gharama ya mbolea. Tumepunguza kutoka shilingi 7,000 mpaka shilingi 3,500. Na mwaka ujao tutapunguza zaidi. So that in due time we will make sure that we manage the cost of living, we manage the cost of food, so that every citizen of the Republic of Kenya anaweza kulisha familia yake na chakula ipatikane kwa bei nafuu na kila Mkenya aweze kujisimamia. That is the direction we are going. Mimi nimesikia mumesema bado. Mimi nataka niwaambie hivi. Hii bei ilikuwa 230. Si ni kweli? Saa hizi ukienda kwa shelf, na mimi nataka niwaambie, endeni hapa Quickmart ama uende Naivas, utakuta iko ya shilingi 200, iko ya shilingi 180, iko ya shilingi 170, iko ya shilingi 158. Wewe ndio utaamua utanunua gani. Kama unataka kununua ya 200, ununue ya 200. Kama unataka kununua ya 158, nunua ya 158. Hiyo ni uamuzi yako. Tunaelewana? Si dunia hii ni demokrasia? Si unafanya ile unajua unataka kufanya? Na mimi nitaendelea kukaza kamba. Bado kuna millers wanatufanyia ukora. Lakini mimi nitapambana na wao mpaka tuhakikishe ya kwamba every citizen has a right to access food that is quality, that is enough for their families. Na hiyo kazi mimi nitafanya na bidii. Unajua hawa jamaa, hiyo safari ya kufikisha unga 230 ilikuwa ni safari ya miaka 4. Sasa mimi nataka niwaulize, safari ya miaka 4 unaweza kukamilisha kwa wiki 2? Hata kama wewe ni malaika? So watulize boli. Maneno mimi napanga. Ama ni aje? Sijui kama tunaelewana.
Anyway, it goes.
As Ramogi,
I'm sure there's a burning point.
It's a very straightforward point as he comes.
Yeah,
in.
sure.
You see, in leadership, you don't want to sort of sound like the old, like a record. Like, look, Jubilee administration inherited an irrigation plan from the Kibaki administration to do irrigated agriculture. And there was a whole list of over 100 dams. What became of it? Jubilee administration, of which, Jubilee administration told us they were going to irrigate 1 million acres in Garana Kuraru so that we will solve the food issues once and for all. I think that was 4, 5, 6 years ago. So, you can forgive Kenyans if they are skeptical, if you keep making the same promise over and over and not really delivering on it. What Kenyans want, frankly, are not promises. And as to the Sufuria movement, I hope you are all watching the public protests in France, and I've noticed that they themselves come out to the streets with pans and because it's symbolism about what is hurting people. But anyway, it is Ramogi's turn. I just think that government, this current government is long on promises and repeating the same things. If you go further in that clip, they talk about CHVs, community health volunteers, community health workers, and that they have come up with this big plan. I can tell you this. I was governor in Laikipia. I had 1,400 community volunteers. That is how we got NHIF coverage to 60%. That is not even news. I mean, that's what we've been doing. So frankly, But
you're about the only one who was doing things like that. And you had a very good rating on the sound financial management. The rest of the system was not moving along.
No, but CHVs as a program and as the way to deliver preventive health across the country.
Yes.
And this is a program from way back when Anyang Nyong was from Kibaki 1. All I'm saying is that, look, it really means when you announce something that has already happened, not even done by you, that has been happening, and you announce it as a plan of what you will do, where are we going with it?
But as you criticize, just briefly, we should praise in equal measure, perhaps. But what do you make of the politics of Unga prices? We had some of the Azimio leaders, and this wasn't clarified by KEBS or anything, that perhaps those with low prices are perhaps GMO and Kenyans should avoid it. What do you make of that?
Look, as he himself has pointed out, if you look at certainly what I have seen in the supermarket is that the regular or fairly known brands of Unga are still in the 200 range. I have seen a new, certainly to me, a new brand. I think Umi, or I don't know, can't remember, but I don't want to spoil people's businesses here. But I've seen a new brand that was at 158 or 150, something like that. Now,
you've seen on TV, or you've actually seen it in a supermarket?
I have seen in a picture of a supermarket.
In the supermarket.
Yeah, I've seen in a picture of a supermarket. As to the regular brands, I have seen myself with my own eyes in the supermarket, and they are still in the 200 plus range. the reason food inflation, if we want to go to real actual data, the reason food inflation was down in April is because the price of vegetables came down in April for all vegetables plus onions, and that's the data from the Bureau of Statistics. That has to do with rain. It's not really anything that government did. Yeah.
Okay.
But the range, just you can go online and project the data from the Bureau about April inflation and this data was released April 26, April 27 there. What really brought inflation down is cost of the food was lower, and the main driver was lower vegetable prices. And if you look in January, because of drought, that was the reason. Again, the February inflation figure had gone up to 9.6 because prices of vegetables were quite high.
Okay. Yeah. Ramogi, finally.
Finally, yeah. I was afraid this guy was going to start.
I'm holding my horses. I'm really holding. I want to hear from you.
The president is very smart. And I think some of the plans he's laid out are very, very good for the country. If you look at the manifesto these guys did, it was just good. And I remember that time we were not to comment on the manifesto, but man, you look at it and you're like, yes. So on that plan, in terms of planning, I think he's on point. In terms of implementation and the team he has, time will tell. Now, let me start from inflation, as Mheshimiwa has alluded to. Yes, our inflation rates are a bit high, or not a bit, actually quite high. But they are not, they are not as extreme. I think there are countries that are reporting 45%, 78% across the globe because the inflation problem is not localized, it's global. I still feel that there is a lot that we can do as a country in terms of driving it downwards. I watched the show last week where Governor was talking about the targeted inflation being 7.5. It's actually 5.0, with
two and a half on either side.
Yes, with 2.5 on either side. But if you say 7, that means 2.5 on either side would take it to 10. And it cannot come to 0% because that now will bring us to deflation. So it needs to be somewhere 5%, maybe 2.5% at the least.
What is the problem with deflation?
Deflation is a big problem because it means then production does not get the real value of investment.
But look at other economies and what they're doing. Because you see, you want to reset.
Even if you're resetting,
you want to reset.
Somehow,
in a country where inflation is 0.
I think Benin, it is 1.3% real inflation.
No, I appreciate that. But even if
Eritrea is like 3%. Seychelles in our neighborhood is 2.39%.
Which is within the range of what the CBK is targeting. What you are proposing is deflation, which is then going to send us to a place where there's no motivation to produce. And when there's no motivation to produce, you do not get investment.
Japan has been in deflation, as has Sweden, as has Finland. What are you talking about?
I think
Governor is talking, it's like he's just landed in Kenya. Those are, you are so...
You were to hold your thoughts.
Yeah, please.
And so on that one, I think we are on track. I don't like the fact that I really still am not convinced that subsidies is the way to go, either side, whether consumption or production. Because it's just proving to be problematic. I think we need to come up with better policies in terms of encouraging investment, private sector investment in some of these places, and we've not done a very good job at that. Whether it's in terms of fiscal policies that encourage guys to just go into those areas of investment, whether it's some sort of tax relief, or we have not come up with some of those policies that would encourage someone like me to go into agriculture. Because agriculture is very high risk, and you need a very good reason why you should go there. If we are going then to subsidize, I'd rather we then say that let's do agricultural insurance and say anyone who goes into agricultural investment, then we support them by giving them insurance. In case of bad weather, then they access that. And so on that, I would support the president that we are on the right track. I don't like some of the implementation mechanisms that are being put in place, but the planning is good. I hate Mandamano, but I also hate what the police is doing. The Mandamano people have every right to Mandamana, including in France, they put sufurias on their head, and it is allowed. Yeah. I should be able to go to Mandamano. But I live in an area where, when there's Mandamano, shops close. And
destruction of property.
There has been destruction on both sides, because I don't think it's Azimio guys who went into the property of the former president to destroy it. I don't think that was Azimio at all. I don't know about the bus, I don't know about anywhere else, but that one I'm sure, that was not Azimio. That one, and I'm glad that the president told the police, carry your own cross, because that was the epitome of responsibility on the part of the police, to just allow that thing to continue for the many hours that it did. In Kibera, the police were working hand in hand with the youth that were armed by people to fight the people protesting. And I think that is very responsible, because now if you cultivate that as the police, and the police is supposed to be neutral, it means then that tomorrow I can also hire the police and now just come to your property and destroy it, and I'm sure that the police is backing. That is a very bad place to go. Okay. And so even if we say that Mandamano has its own side effects, I think the police needs to be more responsible.
Okay, well noted. Kindly respond to that, but equally as you do, since we're talking about Labor Day economics, I have an article here from The Standard that was produced on Tuesday. If we could have it on our screen. It questions why minimum wage narrative is absolute. And having an economist here, it would be proper to get your input right here. And there's a quote, just briefly, perhaps I can even zoom in, so we can get, I think that's the farthest. But the minimum wage hypothesis has failed. It has not kept pace with the rising cost of living, causing many Kenyans to live below the poverty line. And of course, workers were not too happy when the minimum wage wasn't increased this year. But the effectiveness of this increase, taking a look at the inflation, is what is being questioned right here. Well, what do you make of it?
Let me start there. Thanks, Jesse. But there are so many good points around the table. Also, I'll come back to them. Let me start with the question you have raised. What that is saying is that the minimum wage that was set is no longer applicable. It's been bypassed for a long time. It's obsolete. The wage, the level. But the idea is, because sometimes when you read this quickly, you might think that the idea of setting minimum wage is an obsolete. It's not obsolete. However, I think part of this has been that, and let me go to Kotu, the proponents of workers' rights, Kotu, more than anybody else, there are others as well, had learned to sort of keep quiet and just shower praises for a long time. And then maybe they found it a huge leap to come out now and agitate for minimum wages. But in an economy in which we have had this differential performance among the socioeconomic classes, some are still coping irrespective of the high cost of living. They're complaining only mildly and so on. But others are really, really struggling. I mean, I anecdotally, I do get messages from people, not only in Nairobi, even up country. Please just send me 200 shillings. So that one of them said he's in town, he doesn't know how to get home. There is no food in his family. It was that bad. And we didn't have a system which identifies these kinds of people and provides them with the support. So minimum wages can help, definitely. They tend to go towards living wages. A living wage is one which you can survive on in relation to the current realities of that time, whatever it might be. So minimum wages are a good thing to do. I think that Kotu went to bed and fell asleep. They should do the trade unions of today can do analytics that indicate that there is justification for raising the minimum wage. Of course, it has other consequences that we can't go into right now. But I think it's unfortunate that it was completely silent, and yet we had the entire trade union brigade But it should not just be the trade unions. Already around the table is how much we are all complaining about high cost of living and so on and so forth. Just imagine for those that either have no wages or are only marginal wages. So the idea is not obsolete. The current level may be obsolete by itself. But let me comment also very quickly on what my colleagues have discussed. When you allow, the Constitution does allow picketing of various ways that you can do. And in most of these countries we see, it is allowed. Some of the countries have had a bad experience. Let's just start with the US at the top. After the elections of 2020, when the losing candidate wasn't satisfied and people went on the street, occupied the US Capitol, and actually, began to knock things, do things, and so on. The candidate, of course, denied that he had anything to do with it. So what it does there or here or anywhere else, it unleashes, I would say, the animal instinct in all of us. You want to sort of do something that highlights the fact that you're out there on the street. And that's why you get a mortuary being raided and vandalized. The little supermarket owner in Kisumu, for example, which had been fairly peaceful, even at times when we expected to get a demonstration. They didn't. And people said, people are coming of age and so on. Now, once people are out
this
there...
This time round, they actually beat someone who tried to do that again.
Okay. Oh, I didn't follow that, yeah. But once you have allowed this to happen, all kinds of reactions occur. You get a criminal component of those protesting, and you get an overreaction of those supposed to providing a defense. One of the things I'd hope Mheshimiwa Tandaza and his colleagues in Parliament would do is to define stones either in the hand or on a sling as weapons, because those can kill if they hit you. And the police can get individually angry. I've seen that in the US. Somebody's just upset, maybe left his home upset and overreact and so on. And similarly, you get people then, instead of targeting, what do you call this, targeting the anti-riot, you're shooting the gas into the air, they shoot with the canister directly. That kind of things is a sign of anger, and such police should go back for re-education or other additional corrective measures, certainly. Okay. But we cannot pretend that the people on the picket lines are nuns. Yes, nuns to mean innocent, not aiming to harm anybody, either by appearance or action. They are a lot more than that. Some of them are young people who just want... I've seen guys doing press-ups. I'm not getting the challenge I came out here to do, and that kind of thing. And they'll do that for fun and so on. That all kinds of things do happen. But I think, all in all, the law needs to be modified a bit. These rights in the Constitution are not meant to be absolute, but they can be interpreted as absolute depending on who goes out there. So that when damage occurs, for example, there must be restitution. And that needs, I think, to be fixed. Not from the insured, maybe if you're insured, you're the one that will be blamed, but you just can't pass like that, and so on. Okay, there are many other aspects that they raised that maybe I'm staying too long on the floor.
No worries. I don't know if I can have time.
Briefly, before we
cross over back to Tandaza.
Very patient, we've noted.
Thank you. No, two things. One is on the minimum wage I wanted to comment on. I agree with Mheshimiwa that no, it's not obsolete because there are still members of the community that need to be protected in terms of labor rights, and I think that still stands. What I agree on is it's long overdue to be revised. But the bigger comment on that subject is on the inequalities around our wages in this country. You find that, for example, the lowest paid government officer would be, say, 16,000. And the highest paid, perhaps the president, I don't know, would be, say, 2 million, 3 million. That divide is huge. It is impractical. We need to come up and say this is the average, and then we put a roof in terms of that average. This is the highest we can pay, and this is the lowest we can pay. So that that inequality is not too big, because that has a way of destabilizing the country.
Equally, employers wanted time to implement changes in minimum wage. Talk about deductions as well, since you talked about it. The lowest cadre being lowered in terms of NHIF contributions. I think it's to 300 bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what do you make of that?
No, in terms of NHIF, I mean, health insurance globally is stagnated according to your income. And so if we say, for example, this gentleman is insured by NHIF. Now, his insurance by NHIF is very different from his messenger's insurance on NHIF. And then now you want them to pay the same amount. It's impractical. And so that is why I agree that this needs to be stagnated according to your income. And it needs to make sense.
Okay.
But now I also wanted to comment on something Mheshimiwa said. I am a Luo. And I think as Luos we've been demonized as pariahs, people who are violent, people who should not be anywhere close to power. I thank the president for making the CDF, the gentleman CDF. He is the first one to be CDF in this country since independence, because for some reason, Luos should be never that close to armory and military
that was
power.
a master stroke from the president.
You can imagine what you can do with the stones.
And
On a light note.
On a light note. And so, two things. One, I heard Mheshimiwa Sonko say how they used to ban vehicles, buy a vehicle, actually ban it to make some people look violent. And I have not forgotten that reality, even as we face the realities of maandamano.
Okay.
That it is possible there are people who are actually buying properties and banning them to make some people look violent. Especially the location, for example, where that matatu was banned and its affinity to Kibera made me uneasy, and I wondered, is Sonko's theory operating in this manner?
Though, did you hear from the purported owner of the bus? I think he spoke yesterday with the members of the Matatu Owners Association, say they will protect themselves next time there are protests.
And so in Kisumu, you find that if you ask the young men who are picketing who went into that supermarket, they could not tell you so and so and so and so, because they knew where they were at that time. So this time around, they were more prepared. And they said, anybody who goes into a supermarket, we will deal with him. Because ordinarily, the picketing is peaceful. The people who disrupt the peace is the police. But what happened this time around, it is possible that there are people who are hired to go into that supermarket and make Kisumu look violent. We are also tired of being profiled. Let me add that this thing of stones being weapons, Mheshimiwa, you want to destroy us. You want to finish. Clearly, you want to finish us. Because you see, a weapon should be something unique. Something someone actually went out of their way and perhaps bought or got with a motive, so that then a judicial officer sees, hii kitu umeenda ukatafuta. Yes, there was motive.
But mawe inajenga. Ukitumia mawe kugonga mtu, isn't that motive?
No. This one, just a minute.
Without interrupting you, stones were on sale this time.
We saw those videos,
No. Of course, let's
Spirit
not,
of commerce.
Buy one, get one free.
Let's not get excited.
Okay, briefly.
Because a stone is something you can just pick from here and protect yourself. So now, if we say, for example, that stone is a weapon, it means then the police has every right to shoot you as long as you have a stone. And this could be a 10-year-old, this could be a 5-year-old, this could be an 8-year-old having a stone, and you want the police to shoot you. So on that one, Mheshimiwa, please, usitumalize kwa ground.
And it's proper to note the Interior CS, while in Parliament, mentioned they don't use live ammunition during protests. Okay, Kasim, finally.
Thank you. I think I'll be on 3 issues. One, we're talking about economy today, and that's why I've said this is a very critical issue. And from the papers that you've given us, if you allow me to quote, Kenya has cut down borrowing by at least 400 billion in order to reduce the debt burden and free money for development. President William Ruto revealed yesterday, the papers that you've given us.
Yeah.
So even the president knows that the debt burden is the monster, and steps are being taken, including cutting down on further borrowing. But of course, the economists will still agree you cannot do without borrowing. Even you at an individual level, you borrow on daily basis, you see, informally, if you want to go that direction. That was one. Two, Mheshimiwa Ramogi, I think you are also being very sensational when you say you and Kibera saw the police protecting people with arms to kill or to attack the other people. Let's be honest, you are not in Kibera in the first place. You don't look like the one who was in Kibera. Let's
Boss,
be very
Kibera
honest.
is home.
That is one. Two, that is two. If you have that information, then help the Kibera people, help this nation by recording that statement because you saw the policeman. I believe you saw that policeman. You saw that they are protecting. You have all that evidence, you know.
let
Otherwise,
me
just
rephrase
putting it-
before he
Yeah.
implicates me.
Yeah.
I saw the video on Boniface Mwangi's handle.
All right.
Okay, now,
Proceed,
if it
yeah.
goes to video, you know, there is the issues of editing, there is the issues of photoshopping. Now we might not go that direction. So I don't think now we will take
to
that seriously.
authenticate,
Yeah, it can't be authenticated. The issue of Mheshimiwa Sonko, the ex-governor, who I have a lot of respect, I not only have a lot of respect, most of you might not know that he's actually my voter in Kwale.
Yeah,
That-
he's a Kwale man.
Yeah, he's a Kwale man. There are so many things that he has said before, you see, including declaring himself an acting president. So I don't think you can also take that to the bank or take that to the police station and say, this is the evidence that I have because Mheshimiwa Sonko said. But the serious issue here is we need this country to move forward.
Okay.
The moment, as a leader, you do something knowing that this will be the outcome and it's not going to be pleasant, then you have every duty as a leader to say, no, let me not take this direction. I think that is where the basic is. We know the Constitution is clear, but we know the moment you declare demonstrations, even if it is for teachers, even if it is for nurses, you know, we've had these things before, you know. That is not the right way to go. So I think I take Mheshimiwa's seniors, SACWAs, that probably there's something we can do in terms of legislation. I think even ex-governor here had mentioned that I think there's still some loose ends that we can do as legislators in terms of pushing forward the actualizing that constitutional right so that it becomes a way of passing a message and noted and messages taken, not just for destruction of property. Mass demonstration equals to mass destruction. So as a leader, if I know that that is the, including what you are saying, if I know that if I do this, then people are likely to infiltrate. Not only those who are hired, even ordinary thieves, ordinary goons, actually put themselves in that demonstration for the purposes of stealing phones and everything. People lose a lot, you see. So you can see. So the best thing is to avoid, you know, you avoid that scenario at all. And there are several ways. Like if it is the information, we have been in record as Kenya Kwanza. Can you pass this information in parliament? You have your legislator and very able-bodied legislators. You have very good legal minds in parliament. This one you have to admit. They have every right to bring those matters in parliament. And I can assure you, contrary to what most people think, in Kenya Kwanza, we take every idea on its merit. It's not that you are going to oppose outright, simply because it was from Otenda Amolo or from nobody. No, for it has merit. We are the ones who proposed the creation of the leader of opposition. For all for the Azimio to say no, you know, it makes logic. Maybe until somebody says, now go and tell them I've agreed, that's the time now they are saying, I think this is a good idea. This idea has been there right from the inception of this 13th parliament. His Excellency the President was part of the memoranda that we need this position. And we cannot actually pretend that this position is not going to sort out some of the issues that we're actually taking onto the streets. So my point and my appeal is, as leaders across the board, let's look at every issue on its own merit. Is this good for this country? Let's take it up. Is it not good? Let's leave it across board. And that is the position of this government. And I think the president is on the record. He welcomes every good idea. He has accommodated everybody, including what he's been alluding. I think for the first time they agree that is this government that has given the highest number of opportunities or positions from Luo Nyanza. So this issue of probably thinking that...
Forget about the number. But now we have a CDF.
It's too comical. Anyway, let's proceed.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as you come in, I'd like you to comment on matters devolution, because on page 9 of the Standard, we have what happened yesterday at KICC. The devolution PS was ejected from an MCA's meeting, and they were actually agitating for more salaries at this point in time. Is this feasible from where you sit? And equally, you've worked in a devolved unit. You've actually led a devolved unit. What makes it so dicey in terms of handling members of county assembly? Because we've had previous instances where governors have found themselves on the receiving end due to not perhaps ascertaining certain issues. Kawira Mwangaza recently talked to us about this.
Well, okay, let me start there and then circle back to the points that are on the table. Well, what I would encourage honorable members of county assemblies, it is not the PS for devolution or the president or the deputy president who sets up salaries. Salaries are regulated by the Salaries and Enumeration Commission. So what the CAF should do is I guess, go negotiate with the Salaries and Enumeration Commission. Of course, as they do so, they must realize the dire economic circumstances that we are in. But I wish them luck.
Sure.
That would be the right process. Even if the president came to KICC or to any fora, they may not be able really to increase your salary. Be the person who can legally, lawfully set, whatever.
So the 14-day ultimatum, null and void.
It's not void. Now, of course, MCAs, and I want to encourage MCAs and even members in the National Assembly, of course, and Senate. You see, you must understand your role in how power and things like that work. You can make a threat that really just makes you look awkward. If you don't pass your own budget, let us say, as a county assembly, since we're in Nairobi, let me say Nairobi, well, your salary, first of all, comes from there. Even hiyo kidogo that you don't want is part of that budget. So if you don't pass the budget, wewe mwenyewe, you don't have a salary. So the thing salary issues, allowances issues, it is SRC that sets them. That would be the right forum.
All right.
Let me circle back to the question of debt. You see, there is what we promise, or politicians, and there is what they actually do. Now, this this reduction in borrowing is like this. In the 2022-23 budget, or in the 2021-22 budget, Parliament had approved for the then Jubilee administration a borrowing of just a little over 1 trillion. Okay. In the end, so closer to 1.1 trillion. In the end, they borrowed around 730 billion. Now, and the reason the market, you see, as I say, there's what political leaders are promising verbally, and there's what they are doing. The reason the market does not believe this government is the following. The budget policy statement shows that the expenditure will go up to 3.56, call it 3.6 trillion, from the current 3.2, 3.3 trillion. Government then says they expect they will move up tax collection to about 2.6 or so trillion, and A to about 300-400. Now, those are fairly aggressive targets, which the market is skeptical about. And that's why you've been seeing the market holding out, yeah, and not basically voting with their feet. But did government borrow less the previous financial year? They did borrow less than Parliament had allowed them to do, which is a good thing. But in the budget policy statement, in the debt management strategy, all of those instruments are showing an aggressive borrowing because of a widening deficit. So what is being promised by the leadership verbally and what they have presented themselves and our colleagues here in the National Assembly have approved is a very different story. And that is really the reason the markets are behaving the way they are. Okay. I want to just get out of two questions. The proposals about leader of official opposition. First of all, these proposals are not new. They were contained in the BBI. You recall the BBI had passed through many, many hoops and was defeated in the court of law just before a referendum, meaning the National Assembly, the Senate, and the county assemblies had approved it. A key plank or a key proposal in that in the BBI was official leader of opposition. In the fullness of time, and we want to encourage that talks actually yield something, but in the fullness of time, that proposal can only be effected if there is a referendum, because it goes to some fundamental structure. It goes to changing the way Parliament is composed, and most legal view is that that requires a referendum, so that even if it is agreed in the bipartisan, that is something that has to go to mass action. My last point, I'm sorry, half a minute. Look, please read the Katiba again. Power belongs to Kenyans, to the people. They donate that because the Katiba says they exercise it directly or indirectly through their elected representatives. So that the citizen always has that power. They elect Honorable Kasim and the other colleagues and the president and whoever. If they feel that their elected representatives are not doing what they want, they always have the power. And that power, yes, we agree, should be exercised responsibly. It is not, that is not about going out to destroy property. It's about going out to express a view. In the role of the police service, and I want to emphasize here, police service, it is no longer a force. When you have a large crowd, you will have pickpockets in there. You will have people of ill will in there. The purpose of the police when there is picketing and demonstration is actually to assist the citizens do it safely. It is not to block roads. It's not to bring water cannons to stop people from going down a street. And that, and I agree with our colleague Ramogi, that behavior of police to stop the march is generally what brings the confrontation. And really, and I tell you, if you speak to most police officers, from constables to senior police officers, they will tell you they know that the orders they are given to block protesters from going down the agreed path are actually not correct.
Okay, well noted. Gentlemen, we have to take a short break. We'll come back with your sentiments, even as we shift focus briefly to the new funding model for universities in the country. It made to the front page of the Standard, the back page of the Daily Nation, touching on what President William Ruto had to mention yesterday in terms of radical changes, which has been mentioned as a major win for students from poor households, as the president opened a path for free college education, with only deserving cases getting graduated state funding.